Tonight, we're talking about Iran, a country painted as a perpetual threat by the US and Israel, but the real story is far more complex. We'll break down the true objectives behind the US-Israeli campaign, from regional dominance and economic control to the new great power rivalry with China. Let's peel back the rhetoric and see what's really at stake. The US has long treated the Middle East, a region brimming with resources and geopolitical significance, as its strategic backyard, a critical area for maintaining its global influence and projecting power across continents. The US has been aiming for total dominance over oil, the lifeblood of modern economies, trade, ensuring the free flow of goods and resources, and political order, shaping the region's landscape to align with its own strategic interests and maintaining a favorable balance of power. Iran's independence, its sovereign choices, and its refusal to play by Washington's rules, particularly regarding its nuclear program and regional policies, is a direct challenge to this hegemony, threatening the established order and the US's perceived control over the region. Crushing Iran, therefore, is about sending a message to any other nation that might consider defying US interests. Resist, and you'll be made an example of, facing severe consequences for challenging the established global power structure. The ultimate goal? What is the driving force behind these actions? To keep the US as the global power broker, the dominant force in international affairs, especially over energy-dependent Europe and Asia, maintaining leverage over key economic players through control of vital resources. The so-called Axis of Resistance, Hezbollah, the Houthis and others, stands with Iran against Israeli occupation and US influence. The US and Israel aim to dismantle this network, isolating Palestinians and eliminating external support for their cause. The strategy: assassinations, bombings, sanctions, and diplomatic pressure to break every link in the chain. The US and Israel want to weaken or overthrow Iran's government, using sanctions, cyber attacks, and support for opposition groups. The goal isn't just behavior change, it's collapse and replacement with a compliant regime. This strategy weaponizes the suffering of ordinary Iranians, hoping internal pressure will fracture the system. It's a high-risk gamble that could spark civil war, but remains central to US policy. The shadow of potential conflict looms large. The ongoing pressure and sanctions against Iran is not just about Iran itself, but serves as a stark warning to the entire region. It's a message echoing across borders, influencing decisions and alliances. Defy the US, challenge its established order, and you'll face isolation, economic hardship, and ultimately ruin. The examples of nations that have fallen out of favor are clear and serve as a constant reminder. As Gulf states cautiously explore partnerships with China and Russia, seeking to diversify their alliances, the US uses Iran as a cautionary tale, a demonstration of the consequences of straying from the established order. It's about punishing any assertion of sovereignty and actively discouraging any moves away from the dominance of the dollar in global trade. The underlying message, delivered through actions and policy: stick with the US, maintain the existing partnerships, or risk becoming the next target, the next nation facing economic and political isolation. It's coercive diplomacy at its finest, a strategy of influence, backed by the ever-present threat of total economic destruction, a fate no nation willingly chooses. The nuclear issue is the public justification, but the real aim is to keep Iran from gaining any deterrent power. A nuclear-capable Iran would force the US and Israel to treat it as an equal, so the goal is to dismantle even its peaceful nuclear program. The collapse of the JCPOA proved the US wants a subjugated, not just non-nuclear Iran. The petrodollar system, oil sold in US dollars, is the backbone of American economic power. Iran's push to sell oil in other currencies is a direct threat. The US campaign against Iran is about punishing this defiance and warning others not to challenge the dollar's dominance. The oil will flow, and it will be paid for in greenbacks, or else. Beyond oil, the US wants the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency, giving it unmatched economic leverage. Iran's efforts to de-dollarize trade are met with crushing sanctions to deter others from following suit. The goal: keep all global finance orbiting the US Treasury. Iran is a key partner for China: energy, investment, and diplomacy. The US aims to destabilize Iran to disrupt China's Belt and Road Initiative, and sever Beijing's access to Middle Eastern energy. By making Iran toxic, the US hopes to force China to abandon it or get bogged down in regional chaos. It's all about sabotaging China's rise by attacking its alliances. The US uses divide-and-conquer tactics in the global south, especially by courting India as a counterweight to China. Pressuring India to distance itself from Iran fractures potential anti-US blocs like BRICS. The aim, keep the global south divided and unable to challenge Western dominance. The US exploits regional tensions, especially Sunni-Shia divides, to keep the Middle East dependent on American security. By stoking conflict around Iran, the US justifies arms sales, military bases, and disrupts rivals' projects. The goal isn't peace, but perpetual instability that keeps the region open to US influence. The US counters China's Belt and Road by hyping debt-trap diplomacy, scaring countries away from Chinese investment. Destabilizing Iran lets the US paint China as an unreliable partner, tarnishing the BRI brand and making US alternatives seem safer. Multipolar alliances like BRICS and the SCO threaten US dominance. By keeping Iran under pressure, the US sows discord within these groups, making cooperation difficult. The aim? Keep these alliances weak and divided, never a true counterweight to the West. China's rise in Africa alarms Washington, so the US pushes narratives of Chinese neo-colonialism and debt traps. Crushing Iran sends a warning to African nations: align with US rivals and you'll pay the price. Destabilizing the Middle East also disrupts Chinese projects in Africa, reinforcing the need for US security. The US funds and arms proxy groups to destabilize adversaries without direct intervention. In Iran, this means supporting separatists and extremists to drain resources and create internal chaos. The chaos is the point, keeping Iran and its allies bogged down and distracted. Central Asia is a battleground for influence between the US, China, and Russia. Iran is a key gateway for China's Belt and Road. Destabilizing Iran blocks this route and keeps the region dependent on US-controlled corridors. The US aims to limit China's reach by keeping the great game in play. The US fears a solid Iran-Russia-China alliance which could end American dominance. By pressuring Iran, the US hopes to fracture this partnership, isolating China and weakening the multipolar project. The strategy stressed the weakest link, Iran, to break the chain. The US is waging a tech war to maintain its edge, blocking rivals from advanced technology. Iran is both a target and a potential conduit for tech to China and Russia. Sanctions aim to dismantle Iran's tech sector and prevent it from fueling China's rise. Iran maintains control over the crucial Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for the world's oil supply. The US aims to police this strategic toll booth, potentially threatening China's vital energy lifeline. This tension with Iran provides justification for a large US naval presence and ultimately keeps China in a vulnerable position. War with Iran would devastate global food supply chains, driving up prices and causing instability. This chaos can be weaponized to topple regimes and make countries more dependent on US aid. It's a ruthless strategy, using hunger as a tool of power. The Ukraine war is part of the same strategy: bleed Russia dry. Iran's support for Russia makes it a target. Attacking Iran weakens Russia's war effort. The US aims to cripple both adversaries by targeting their partnership. Iran is a key piece in the US's global chess game against China. Neutralizing Iran would disrupt China's energy, alliances, and influence, weakening Beijing without direct confrontation. Every move against Iran is really about isolating and containing China. The US wants a world where no country acts without Washington's approval. Iran's refusal to ask for permission makes it the ultimate target, a warning to others. The lesson: true sovereignty means risking economic strangulation and military threat. US foreign policy is built on double standards, rules for others, exceptions for itself. The war on Iran is a showcase. Iran is punished for actions the US and its allies commit with impunity. The goal: control the narrative and ensure American power is the only law. The US is pushing for a new Cold War, framing Iran as a proxy of the China-Russia bloc. This binary with us or against us mentality forces countries to pick sides, justifying a more aggressive US posture. The confrontation with Iran is a key theater for igniting this global struggle. The US vision is a world where smaller nations have no real power, just the illusion of sovereignty. The war on Iran is about enforcing this order, crushing any nation that dares to chart its own course. True sovereignty becomes a privilege reserved for the US. Everyone else must accept their place. America is an empire in decline, cycling through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and eventually, acceptance. Right now, the world endures its anger sanctions, proxy wars, and hyper-militarized policy. The hope is that, in time, the US will accept a multipolar world and become a powerful nation among others, not the sole hegemon. Until then, the world waits for America to reach acceptance. The narrative surrounding Iran often focuses on its nuclear ambitions. But the campaign against Iran is about far more than just nukes. It's a complex and multifaceted battle for global dominance, a struggle that extends far beyond the immediate concerns of nuclear proliferation. It's about shaping the future of international relations. Energy, the lifeblood of modern economies, is undeniably a key factor. Control over resources and trade routes is at stake. Finance, the intricate web of global markets and monetary systems, is also deeply intertwined. Sanctions and economic pressures are powerful weapons in this conflict, and ultimately, it's about the future world order. The existing power structures are being challenged, and the outcome will determine the shape of global governance for decades to come. The real victims are not just Iranians who face economic hardship and political instability, but global stability, which is threatened by escalating tensions and the potential for wider conflict. It jeopardizes the hope for a more peaceful multipolar world, where cooperation and diplomacy prevail over confrontation and coercion. Understanding these complex motives, the underlying drivers of this conflict, is our first and most crucial defense against the next war. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis and critical discussions on global issues.